Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, returning guest. This will be our 25th show. We've done so many great shows. Our most recent was on Lex Fridman.
Yes.
I'm proud of my title. Is Lex Fridman? Does Lex Fridman have more charisma than a houseplant, or is he a plant? But that was our 24th. His name is John Brisson. We've read the documents. Check it out. Check out his YouTube. He got his YouTube channel back. He's putting out great content on Substack. And I think all their shows really stand the test of time. They're
Yes.
still relevant, evergreen. We've done shows on Trump and so many different things, but he's just published a book. I read through it. It's really well formatted and a lot of information. I think it's 500 pages. If you're watching this on Rumble, Rockfin, or X, you'll see the cover. It's Fix Your Mitochondria. And again, Brisson, it's Brisson. And that's kind of how he got started. For people who don't know, he was more kind of a health kind of advisor, really. I think that's where your original email was, Fix Your Gut.
Yes,
so I think that's another one. Anyway, you can talk more. Maybe for people who listen to my show, they know you, but also maybe you could just talk about your kind of health background for people to just see you as a researcher. Maybe you can talk about kind of Fix Your Gut and then what led you to write this book, Fix Your Mitochondria.
Yeah, William, thank you for having me on again. It's a pleasure, brother. And all both of our research, avenues of research stand the test of time and keep repeating themselves, especially the West Memphis 3 coming back into the fray and into the news again too, as well. I was a digestive health coach or health coach first, even though I studied conspiracy beforehand, but I wasn't really making it public. When I had learned that 9/11 was an inside job, listening to Alex Jones, who now I don't have any trust in, put no trust in man. But back in the day, I thought he was a truth teller when I was listening to him on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie back in 2008. And, through there, you kind of learn about the fraud of the conventional health system. Not to say, obviously, that there isn't some truth within conventional health. For example, as much as I am a fan of alternative health, I do believe more of an integrative health perspective. Conventional medicine is necessary for diagnostic tests and trauma-based medicine primarily, but has a very poor track record when it comes to cancer treatment, when it comes to autoimmune disorders. It has a very poor track record associated with that, with most of your listeners would agree with that the system is obviously broken. Of course, the AI fixtures of the coming RFK Jr., and part of the Trump administration are not the ways to fix healthcare, but that's a whole nother discussion for another time. I started on the Bulletproof forums. I listened to Dave Asprey on Joe Rogan many years ago. I met my friend Titus, who's been my business partner all these years, and my friend Jason Hooper, who used to write and health coach for Fix Your Gut as well too. And we started this, website where I could write blogs. There's over 250 plus blogs on Fix Your Gut still to this day. I'm still writing new blogs, a way I could help people, offer health coaching as well too. I've been a naturopathic author and health coach for about 14 years. I wrote my book Fix Your Gut, which is on Amazon. I haven't put Fix Your Mitochondria on Amazon yet. I got it formatted in Kindle form, but it can be purchased on my website, fixyourgut.com. Fix Your Gut on Amazon has over 150 plus reviews. It's an Amazon bestseller over the years. And, I knew what it was to be ill. I had silent reflux myself. I was sick with health issues, and silent reflux wasn't a recognized condition at the time. And so the doctors were just telling me that I was crazy because I didn't have the stereotypical heartburn symptoms where a person has like pain in the chest or, usually burning in the chest as someone has with heartburn. And I had to figure out what was wrong with me. And later I figured out I was an H. pylori dysbiosis in my stomach and a whole host of issues. But I figured out that was wrong. And I was able to help myself. And Lord willing, I was able to help a lot of people with various health conditions over the years, just researching it the same way I research conspiracy topics. And so, I've been doing it over the years. I've helped many people. Sadly, I have not been able to help everyone. Obviously, it's the Lord that does the healing. I do my best, and Fix Your Mitochondria. The reason why I wrote this book and the reason why I study mitochondrial health specifically is because my son Abel was born with an extremely rare medical condition. It didn't even have a fancy name of the doctor that discovered it, because there's only 6 people born in the world with it at that time, which was congenital myopathy with excess muscle spindles. Your muscle spindles tell your brain the location of your muscles. So, for example, if you hold your arm behind your head, your fibers obviously are what help give your muscles definition, what help keep them in place. Your spindles tell your brain where the location of your appendages and your body parts are. So my brain knows, that I can't see it. Obviously, I can see it in the camera, but if I was looking at the camera or a mirror, I could tell that my hand is behind my head. Okay. And so because of that, he had less muscle tone. Most kids with this condition died before the age of 2 due to congestive heart failure, because the muscle fibers of their heart weakened over time. And since he had more spindles, and so I was like, okay, is there a way to extend his life? And I figured out through researching of his condition with Dr. Fan, who was a Chinese neurogeneticist in the University of Chapel Hill, absolutely brilliant woman, who at first, when she told me of Abel's condition, she was like, he's going to die and there's nothing you can do about it. And then later, became one of his strongest champions and one of his strongest advocates, and I'm very appreciative of him, where, she allowed me. I figured out that if I can improve the mitochondrial health of his existing muscle fibers, and maybe through mitochondrial biogenesis, even though the heart itself generally doesn't repair itself once damage has been done per se, and like a heart attack, for example, the heart can kind of compensate, but usually the heart tissue itself is damaged beyond total repair, compared to other parts of your body, like if you injured your muscle on your arm, for example. Skeletal muscle is different than cardiac muscle. But that's also, I guess, one reason I go on a tangent. Heart cancer is one of the rarest forms of cancer that a person can get, because of that same, lack of heart cell division, throughout life. And so I figured if I can improve the mitochondrial function, and the mitochondria is what produces energy within your cell. Okay, we can get more about that later. I figured if I can increase the amount of energy that his heart is putting out, that he would not hopefully die of congestive heart failure before the age of 2. And I was able to accomplish that by, giving him certain supplements like ubiquinol, 300 milligrams of ubiquinol, 10 milligrams of PQQ. I was able to give him, good doses of magnesium, take him outside, even though, he can move very well, to get sunlight. There are things I was able to improve his mitochondrial function, that though he died before the age of 3, it wasn't due to him dying of congestive heart failure or due to his, gene mutation, which was an HRASopathy. It was due to medical error. And so, he died due to medical malpractice, not due to his condition. When my wife and I chose to allow him to die with dignity, we took him out up to the rooftop. They took the ventilator off of him, and we held him, and his heart still beat for many minutes afterwards because it was so strong, because of, me using the techniques of improving his mitochondrial health. He didn't, even his post autopsy showed that he did not have congestive heart failure, and his heart was relatively strong for his age. And so it was that information that I gained from taking care of him and trying to extend his life and to give him a better life, that I used to, coach people, and eventually took me a long time, but to write and finish this book. And I do believe if a person improves the health of their mitochondria, and we could talk about, what the mitochondria are, what assaults people's mitochondria, what people can do to improve the health of their mitochondria, why it's important. I think if you can take the same, information that I wrote in this book, and kind of the same protocols that I used with him and other people that I've coached and people in my own personal life, you should hopefully be able to have better health.
Let's start there. What is mitochondria? Maybe some people don't know, and why it's important and what it does for the human body.
Yeah, so your mitochondria are where adenosine triphosphate is produced, which is the energy currency for your
ATP,
heart to beat.
right?
Yes,
Sure.
ATP, for your heart to beat, for your neurons to fire, for your muscles to move. your body has to have some sort of energy currency, right? For it to be able to do work. And that currency is adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, which is produced within the electron transport chain of the mitochondria. Okay, so your mitochondria are known as the powerhouse of the cell. They're what within your cell that produces the energy for your cell to function and maintain homeostasis, hopefully properly. Okay, and so through that, there are issues with a person's mitochondria, especially when they age. Through that electron transport chain, electrons are shuttled in the production of ATP and the production of energy, and they can leak out of the mitochondria due to cellular stressors. For example, the cellular stressors could be obesity, it could be improper light exposure, being under toxic blue light, constantly throughout the day, fluorescent lighting, for example. It could be due to medications you're taking, like the antibiotics, fluoroquinolones, like ciprofloxacin, for example, or statins that you're taking for cholesterol medication. It could be mold exposure in your home that is toxic to you. It could be, the pesticide, chemical laden food that you're eating. There could be various reasons why the mitochondria in your cells are under a sort of oxidative stress, and it causes the mitochondria to be less efficient, for your mitochondria to become unhealthy. And in doing so, they start leaking electrons, and those electrons interact with oxygen or nitrogen within your cells to produce reactive oxygen species or reactive nitrogen species. And in doing so, it starts causing cellular damage, cellular inflammation, for lack of a better term. The mitochondria start dying, less energy is produced by your cell, and eventually your mitochondria, they die, and they signal the cell to die as well too, which is cellular apoptosis. Now, obviously, you want your cells to die sometimes. If they've taken too much damage, for example, you would want them to die properly. Or if they've mutated into cancerous type cells, obviously you'd want them to die. And your body's making cancer right now. My body's making it. Your body's making it. But the body, hopefully through the immune system and cellular apoptosis and mitochondrial apoptosis and regulation, those cells die off, right? So there is a proper homeostasis and regulation for when your cells die. But too much, cell death causes you die from it, technically. And so it becomes problematic as well too. So it's supposed to be within balance, right? So your mitochondria, kind of, though they produce energy, they also control how healthy your cells are and if your cells even live or die. Okay, so that's how crucial the health of your mitochondria is. Your mitochondria is so important. Unlike other parts of your cell, obviously your cellular DNA and RNA can come out of the nucleus, but the DNA itself is contained in the nucleus, right? The blueprint for the cell, right? Your mitochondria are so special, William. They have their own mRNA, and I mean their own mRNA, but they do have their mRNA, but they have their own RNA and they have their own DNA as well too, separately from the cell. Okay, and so much so that one of the strongest, I believe, kind of scientific proof of creationism is that your mitochondrial DNA comes only from your mother. And that can be traced back scientifically to one woman that they call mitochondrial Eve, interestingly enough. And then science goes, well, it's not specifically a person. It was, an ape that later evolved into a Homo sapien, right? But, to me, that's proof of creationism, that God created us, that there was originally one woman, and everyone's mitochondrial DNA derives from that one woman, which is Eve.
Right. So this mitochondria is so important, but it's not functioning at its prime functioning based on, could be any other many negative deleterious influences, right? Poor sleep, bad water, bad food, stress, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, stress, very much so. Yes, too. Our mitochondria are under constant assault. I don't agree with Jack Cruz on everything. He's a new ager. He's also working directly with Nayib Bukele out of his own mouth. But a lot of his research into mitochondrial function and light toxicity in the modern world, especially improper blue light exposure from, fluorescent lighting, for example, or through LED lighting, for example. When you have your phone at night and you're staring into it, the LEDs on your phone are blinking quite quickly, on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. All LED light does that. You might not be able to see it, but your eyes and your brain still register it. And for a lot of people, LED lighting and even fluorescent lighting, which is different, can trigger migraine headaches or headaches in general just from the flickering on and off and on and off, right? So if you're staring at your phone at night and it's the only light source that's on your room, you're in a dark room. Your phone is as bright as the sun, and you're staring at that 600 degree Kelvin blue light directly into your eyes. So your eyes signal to your brain is daytime, and in so doing, melatonin production is lessened. And so if you, like a lot of us, I grew up with the TV on during the night when I sleep, right? So that blue light from the CRT or later from the LCD and the LED emanating from that television reduces the melatonin production. And science has shown melatonin was once thought to only be produced in the pineal gland of the brain, William. Well, now science, and advancements in research have shown that no, it's actually produced in every mitochondria of your cell. And it's an extremely powerful antioxidant. Okay. And so that's why nurses and third shift workers have higher rates of cancer, more than likely, even though correlation isn't always causation, is because their melatonin levels are lower due to improper circadian rhythm or timing their sleep, right? Awake during the day, making sure you're outside
Weird
getting
shifts.
yep,
Yeah.
you're outside getting sun. You want to make sure that if you're wearing glasses, that you're taking those glasses off so the sun's natural light goes in through your retinas to stimulate serotonin production and dopamine production. That's daytime, right? And later, through a process of methylation, if you're in a completely dark room and you have enough, folate, if we're talking nutrients, enough magnesium, your body methylates that serotonin into melatonin, and all the mitochondria of every cell in your body has a very strong antioxidant effect, a very strong reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species, dampening effect. And in doing so, that melatonin, helps your immune system eliminate cancer if any's developed, right? It helps to shrink, hopefully, tumors as well. And it helps, relieve inflammation. And one of the reasons why we do sleep, other than, for our brains, as far as memory consolidation and, refreshment, is it gives our body a chance to heal and repair. Our parasympathetic nervous system is activated the most while we sleep, allowing us to rest and digest. A lot of people don't realize most of your digestion happens while you're asleep as well too, which is why a lot of people, when they wake up, they have to use the bathroom because they've been fasting and digesting the whole night, right? That's why you don't want to eat a meal right before you go to bed. It interferes with your migrating motor complex or your digestion. So, a lot of people don't realize that something as simple as putting a blue light blocking app like Twilight or Flux on their phone, turning down the brightness of their phone at night, sleeping in total darkness, making sure they're getting proper sunlight exposure throughout the day. These things are very important for mitochondrial health and very much important for their overall health, because we're all exposed to a certain degree. It's almost inescapable, unless you're Amish, in our modern society, of all this toxic light and frequencies, light frequencies that we're not exposed to previously beforehand. If you look at the spectrum of fluorescent light, it looks like Mars compared to natural sunlight. Now, incandescent light bulbs, though reversed, still look more natural compared to fluorescent lighting or LED lighting, for example, which look horrible. So imagine what that lighting is doing to your health when humans haven't been exposed to that type of lighting, in, millennia,
Right.
so it's going to and now they're so
Only in the
far
last 50 years, 75 years, maybe something.
yeah, and now they're so far as they're going to, instead of using Wi-Fi, they're going to use light or Li-Fi, use your LED light bulb to transmit data to your phone, right? Or transmit data to your wearables or your Neuralink or whatever. So imagine how much effect that's going to have on a person, because we are receptive to light. God designed us that way. Sunlight is crucial, proper for mitochondrial health, proper sunlight exposure. Obviously, getting sunburn, can lead to skin cancer. But however, studies have shown that not getting enough sunlight, not getting enough vitamin D endogenous production by your body, because when you're exposed to UVB, you produce vitamin D, Okay, people, away from the equator actually have higher rates of melanoma. Now, everything we're talked about in modern day dermatology, that can't be the case, right? Stay away from
Right.
the
The
sun, cover
opposite,
yourself in
right?
sunblock, but that's horrible advice for most people. All right. Like, we need to get sunlight in proper amounts for proper health. And now they're finally admitting that.
Yeah, they are. There's healing like that. And they used to heal actually during the plague, or I mean, not the plague, the Spanish flu, so-called Spanish flu of 1918. They found if they put people outside, fresh air and sun, they actually did better. So you see pictures of the beds being outside. So getting fresh, like the whole story, like the wives' tale of getting fresh air and sun and exercising and oxygenating is crucial. I mean, you got to
Yes.
get outside and get sun. Yeah. I mean, you may not be a sunbather, but I've heard that even some of the correlations between the skin cancer isn't the sun, it's what people putting on their bodies, these horrible sunblocks and stuff. Like
Mhm.
unnecessary, totally unnecessary. Yeah.
Or it could be a lack of omega-3 fatty acids in their diet as well, which provide protection, oxidative stress from the sun, as well as protection to their mitochondrial health. I have a whole chapter on the importance of ingesting omega-3 fatty acids.
And where can people
Uh,
get it? What is omega-3 and where can you get it? Like people say sardines or
mhm.
fish or something.
Most of your seafood obviously would have various amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. I usually recommend like wild caught seafood, obviously. I like wild caught salmon a lot, which would be, most of the time low mercury as well too, which would be a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. Sardines are good as well too, as smaller fish, they accumulate less mercury. So high quality sardines would also be a good source of omega-3 fatty acids. Some people say that fish oil doesn't work as well. I understand that. Jack Kruse talks about it having to be in the triglyceride form or the SN2 position. But there are fish oils that are in the SN2 position, like Nordic Naturals, for example, which I myself have taken for years. Jack Kruse would say that's a big no-no, but I don't think so based off of my own research and my own personal health and everything. I'm not totally against fish oil. For vegetarians or vegans, they can't take algae oil, um, but it's not as good. But there are sources that vegetarians and vegans should, get omega-3 fat, and especially men, since we are XY, chromosome, mutated, we kind of lose the ability of turning alpha linoleic acid into omega-3 fatty acid very easily. So it's harder for us compared to women to be able to make that conversion out of seeds and the ALA that they get from seeds and stuff like that and everything. So for men, it's probably better to get fish, seafood in proper amounts. Um, but yes, that omega-3 fatty acids are very important for mitochondrial health, very important for immune system regulation or endocannabinoid system. We make our own cannabinoids. Most people recognize cannabinoids from THC and marijuana and CBD, obviously. But we make our own endogenously. And one of the ways of making our own is through omega-3 fatty acid ingestion.
There's other things you can take that you say upregulate your mitochondrial function, right? Like, and they talk about what is it, the miracle of what's the Japanese island where everybody lives over 100, and
You're
all
talking
they
about
do,
Okinawa.
yeah, okay, now thanks. They drink green tea like all day, and that's like a huge way,
Mhm.
the natural way. So it's I'm not downgrading supplements, but sometimes you can just have an enjoyable cup of tea that is also going to provide you with really great health benefits, right?
Yes, organic green tea would contain ECGC, which I wrote in my book, which would have a positive effect on what is known as mitochondrial biogenesis, or the creation of new mitochondria cellularly. Also, you have the olive oil diet or the Mediterranean diet leading to longevity as well, which you have the chemical hydroxytyrosol, which is in olive oil, which is also written in my book as a way to improve and enhance mitochondrial biogenesis as well too, which may be why olive oil outside of oleic acid, which is omega-9, is why olive oil is so healthy for us to ingest. It's not a seed oil, it's a fruit oil, right?
Right, right. And it's not processed. It's not processed by, it's not engine, grease or whatever. It's
Yes.
actually most of the best high quality virgin oil is done in a press, just like an old ancient system. So that's a
Yes.
way. Sometimes when I don't feel well, I'll actually pour myself an ounce or two of olive oil just for that, not for some reason because it's just super healthy. And where's metformin? Is that what foods have that in it?
So metformin's a drug. So metformin is a drug that a lot of people use for diabetes, primarily for type 2 diabetes, and a lot of people use it for longevity and mitochondrial purposes. I'm not against the use of metformin, but I talk about it in my book where there is some evidence that some people using it for longevity, some people using it for mitochondrial function, and that might be why it's one of the few diabetic medications that if someone has diabetes and they had to treat it with medication, I'm not necessarily against the use of metformin compared to other diabetic medications, but I would still caution against it, obviously. And I think exercise and weight loss and other things, there's supplements that can be taken for diabetes, for type 2 diabetes, but for insulin resistance. But if someone had to take it, the main drawback from metformin seems to be it causes E. coli dysbiosis, which a lot of people with metformin end up getting gas and diarrhea, and it seems to be the primary reason why. I'm not against its use for those things. I'm not against it as a medicine, but I do caution, and the reason why I talk about it in my book is because there are side effects associated with metformin, and it may not be perfect. And some people take it actually harms their mitochondria. It did to my partner, Fix Your Gut, Jason Hooper. He wrote about his negative experience with metformin, how it did not help him. But you'll see a lot of people in the biohacking longevity forums using metformin for that specific purpose.
Well, here's another thing, like something that's also trendy now. You talk about blue light, but these artificial red lights, right? That people put up and bathe in that. What's your take on red light? Do you have any opinions on that?
I have one myself. I know Jack Cruz would technically be against it, even though they are LED. I myself can see benefit with their use on occasion, depending on the person. People with poor mitochondrial health, and maybe there might be some genetic play in this as well too, because everybody's different. But I have seen some people. I know myself. It's helped me for certain inflammatory issues that I have had. And my daughter, for example, sometimes for some reason, I don't know if it's genetical or not, she'll get a stopped up left eustachian tube. And maybe it's just the heat from the eye infrared and heat from the red light LED, emanating off of it or not. But it seems to help unclog the tube, even if she's she's a good 6 inches away from it, it still seems to work, right? So, for some people, I've seen it help a lot with brain fog and inflammatory issues and energy production. And red light does stimulate the mitochondria, and infrared do stimulate the mitochondria to kind of pep up and produce more energy, which, that can be an issue if you're producing too much reactive oxygen species from producing too much energy. That happens when people take too much methylene blue, for example, which you probably see is very popular right now and being pushed in a lot of circles. And so it can be problematic, but for most people, from what I say, I do recommend the use of red light LEDs, usually using them more than 10 to 15 to 20, especially 20 minutes, you're wasting your time, because your cells, your mitochondria can only absorb so much red light. So eventually it's just like, it becomes, you're wasting your time. It appears after about 20 minutes for most people, it seems you're just wasting your time. And like I said, some people, seem to react to it very well and seem to have a difference to it. And other people just be like, I don't feel any difference at all. It doesn't seem to do nothing. And again, I don't know exactly why that is. Me and Jason Hooper used to talk about it a lot, and we don't know if it's because some people's mitochondrial health report. For example, I have not to go off a tangent, but I have an SOD2 mutation. There's an antioxidant enzyme produced by the mitochondria called superoxide dimutase, and it breaks down reactive oxygen species before they do damage, and neutralizes them within the mitochondria. And I produce less genetically, about 40% less. So I tend to have mitochondrial issues just on the baseline, especially when I get stressed, especially when I'm not sleeping. I don't really have tinnitus when I'm healthy, but when I'm sick or when I haven't slept or when I'm under a lot of stress, tinnitus all of a sudden rears an ugly head. Where on a normal day, I don't have it at all. And that's due to the SOD2 mutation. The tinnitus is coming from poor mitochondrial function and health, right? So on those days where I know that I run down if I take ubiquinol, for example, and PQQ and things to try to improve mitochondrial function and get a good amount of rest and sleep, which is important, get a good amount of sunlight, use the red light if necessary, all of a sudden my tinnitus goes completely away and I don't have it anymore. And so, like I said, I probably just genetically, and also I was 3.5 months premature. I've had numerous surgeries and health issues through my whole life. I function fairly well despite all that, but I am broken in a lot of ways, even still today, So, the red light does react positively for me, but I know people in my own personal life who've done it and they don't feel a difference at all. Maybe it's maybe it's kind of a placebo effect, but I would argue there is a lot of science behind it that kind of counterbalances any placebo effect. So
there's a lot of people pushing it, and a lot of health professionals, or at least alternative medicine types, really advocate for that. And also methylene blue. Have you tried that? I mean, a lot of famous people are taking it.
I myself have not tried methylene blue because I didn't see I necessarily needed to, but I've coached people and I would recommend it to people in my own personal life to use it. I wrote about it in Fix Your Mitochondria and Fix Your Gut. I think it's a good thing to try if necessary, but I wouldn't necessarily be something that I would recommend first line for mitochondrial health. Ubiquinol and PQQ are very safe to try for most people. Ubiquinol is actually given by prescription in Japan for congestive heart failure and for high blood pressure. It's a relatively safe thing to take for most people. There's very low side effects associated with ubiquinol. Sometimes it might cause some stomach upset and some gas, but that seems to be the main side effects. It seems to be relatively safe and tolerated for maximum benefit, right? If we're going by less harm, right? Less experimental, right? But if you want to get experimental, I can name a whole bunch of things to get, a little bit more experimental on. And one of those things would be methylene blue. Now you got to get the dosage right. I give dosage, guidelines. Now, I'm not a medical professional, didn't go to college or anything. Any advice I give you, of course, run by your medical professional and your doctor. But I give a basic guideline of how much one should, try to experiment with. And there are side effects associated with methylene blue. Like I said, you take too much, it could have an opposite effect where it starts causing too much leakage of electrons in your mitochondria and cause inflammation. It can cause serotonin syndrome, especially if you're taking an SSRI or SNRI medication, an antidepressant. You tricyclic antidepressant, you should use methylene blue with caution because it can lead to serotonin syndrome, which you have too much serotonin in your body, which is a medical emergency. All right. So, there are side effects associated with methylene blue. Some of them kind of being temporary, like staining your skin or turning your urine kind of a bluish color, like those are just temporary things that go away. But serotonin syndrome is quite serious if someone would come down with it. Like you have to be hospitalized. It's a pretty serious medical condition. It can kill you, it's less likely to happen for most people, if they're not taking antidepressants, but it still could theoretically happen, based off a person's genes, right? So, what it does is I simply put, I guess I try to explain it. In your electron transport chain, it shuttles electrons faster through, I believe, complex 1 and complex 3, or maybe complex 4. I don't remember exactly because I got dyscalculia. Sometimes I get a number confused in my head. But what it does is it allows electrons to move quicker through the electron transport chain so that more energy is produced, right? Which could be a good thing if there's low amounts of energy being produced by your mitochondria. It's less work they have to do. More electrons can be shuttled, hopefully with less leakage, so that's why methylene blue helps. But again, if you're taking too much and you're having so much electron shuttling and so much energy being produced, the more likely more oxidative stress is going to happen as well too. So like most of the things we could talk about hormesis, where exercise is a form of hormesis, right? You damage your muscles, you make micro tears in your muscles. That's why you get sore. People used to think it's lactic acid buildup. It is not. It's micro tears within your muscles. Okay. You damage your muscles. They rebuild, they cellular regenerate, you get stronger, you have more mitochondria usually in your muscles after that, and you get stronger over time, right? That's hormesis. So the dosage makes the poison. Same thing with methylene blue.
Right. They have people who over-exercised and they're like permanently damaged because their muscles were over-damaged. So that's actually can be a really negative
Oh yeah,
filters.
runners, marathon
Yeah.
runners, they can get heart failure, congestive heart failure, and you can get rhabdomyolysis, where your muscles become injured so to the point where it dumps a whole bunch of injured muscle material into your
Yeah.
bloodstream, and your kidneys can't filter it out if you're dehydrated, and all of a sudden you got kidney damage and need to be put on dialysis. And for some people, as scary as this is, why you always want to be hydrated if you're sedentary and start working out, and you don't want to be sedentary and go headfirst into cross fitness, because
Right.
you'll read rhabdomyolysis,
Right.
cases of that happening, right? But if
No,
you're
it's a real
sedentary and you start
thing.
exercising, stay hydrated, stay cool. And if you start feeling sore and it start hurting, stop immediately. Now, there's a
Yeah.
little bit I'm talking about if you're feeling sore, from exercising. That's not the same as rhabdomyolysis. But if you're in pain and your muscles bruise and it's hurting really bad, you might need to get checked out, because it might be rhabdomyolysis.
Yeah, take it easy. There's no reason to. I mean, it's slow and steady is probably the best thing. You have a full chapter on fasting. Do you think that fasting, like some people are extreme fasters, some people are like 16 hours intermittent fasting? What's your take?
Everybody's different, which is why I have not written a diet book. Every diet is different to a degree. Obviously, there are some things that we would universally say probably aren't best for everyone, like large heaping amounts of sugar in one's diet, right? Or large amounts of rancid trans fats in one's diet is probably not a good idea, right? But I would say that as far as fasting is concerned, most of the studies show that it's crucial. Most of the studies shown that the more calories that you take in and the more that are burned in excess, the more oxidative stress is produced is cellularly over time. The more advanced glycation end products, especially if you're consuming sugars, form, and the more detrimental it is to your body over time. Okay, science is pretty much in agreement in that, and alternative health and conventional health is pretty much in agreement in that too as well. Now there's some studies that show that fasting may be harmful, but they're kind of outliers in my opinion, from my own research. So, you might also see grandiose claims that water fasting for 2 weeks will cure cancer. I'm not going to be against that and counter signal that and say that's not something that person should not try under medical supervision, and it can be quite beneficial. But it's not a one size fit all type thing. Fasting is not a one size fit all type thing. And I talk about it in my book. Women, for example, because of greater hormonal cascades and a less production of testosterone, may be more sensitive to taking in less carbohydrates if they're on ketogenic diets or in carnivore diets, and may be more sensitive to fasting, meaning that cortisol increases for them, which, is a stress hormone, which causes them to hold on to more fat and have more inflammation, which is why when I used to work at the vitamin shop many, many years ago, women who were triathlon runners would come in and go, no matter how hard I exercise and no matter how much I watch my diet, I still gain weight. Why is that? And that's because, training for the marathons jack your cortisol levels up, and women don't have testosterone as men do to kind of blunt that effect. Okay. So women, they get the benefit of having better immune systems, more functioning immune systems, which is why if you get a cold, you might be in bed thinking you're going to die, William. Your wife gets a cold, she's up and around and she's functioning. There is a medical basis for that. Okay. And science has pretty much proved that the estrogen and progesterone tend to be more immune modulators, which is why women, sadly, the double-edged sword of that is they tend to get autoimmune conditions easier than men do, on average, usually because of that. And so there are issues with fasting for women. More, the progesterone and estrogen may drop because you have something called the pregnenolone steal, where more pregnenolone is going to make cortisol instead of sex hormones. And so they might end up having irregular periods or being unable to, be fertile and have children. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it can, though. And it can also, too much fasting can lead to people who have cortisol issues known as adrenal fatigue, people who have an overactive sympathetic nervous system instead of underactive parasympathetic nervous system, the fasting could increase adrenaline levels for them, increase cortisol levels for them. So when they're, fasting, thinking it's helping their health, in reality, it's ends up taking too much of a toll on their body because they have other issues going on underlying that. So they end up getting more agitated and shaky and nervous when they're fasting and unable to sleep and stuff like that. And so, nothing one size fits all. Again, don't let that make you say, well, John's saying fasting's bad. I am not. There are tons of studies out there that for most people, they should fast regularly. For most people, your last meal should be around 6 or 7 in the evening, and your first meal should be around 9 to 10 a.m. Okay. Like if you want to get some intermittent fasting in. Okay. Like there are benefits to doing a day fast. Biblically, religiously, we're commanded to do so. So I mean, there are benefits to fasting. Do not get me wrong, and they're powerful benefits to fasting. You can reduce inflammation. You can hinder tumor growth that relies on glutamine and or glucose to grow, and how you get that is through your diet, right? So there are positive mitochondrial biogenesis effects through fasting. There's powerful immune modulating effects through fasting. But again, not everybody can fast. And also, if you're in a very precarious state where you're very ill, maybe you're getting over some sort of sickness, some sort of illness, or you've injured yourself greatly, those are probably times you don't want to fast. During those times, you might need the nourishment of a proper diet to be able to gain strength. Not always. You need to listen to your body. You need to figure out, exactly what's going on. Some of us have, to different degrees, some God-given intuition on that. But, again, it's not for everyone. And fasting and low carb diets and carnivore diets, for example, though beneficial, sugar ingestion signals insulin, your body's production of insulin and utilization of insulin signals your thyroid gland to produce its hormones for metabolism, right? And so for some people that go on very low carb diets or fast more often or go on a carnivore diet, they don't produce enough thyroid hormones, especially women who have smaller anatomical thyroid glands because of this. And in doing so, that's why your energy might plummet and your metabolism might plummet and you might become constipated when you fast more often or when you go on a carnivore diet or on a low carb diet. Again, it's not for everyone. There are people with, for example, Inuit Native Americans might do well genetically with a carnivore diet, less than eating higher amounts of carbohydrates. And we see that, Inuits that started adapting a very high carb, very high fat, moderate protein standard American diet, gained weight much quicker than other races, right? And so
I've heard
there
that
is
about Pacific Islanders too.
Yep.
Like, yeah.
And so there's a genetic aspect to that as well too.
So you kind of got to just figure out yourself, like be true to your body and your signals. The good news is there's a lot of options you have to increase your mitochondrial function, right? A lot of things you can do. I mean, I think low energy and stress is really endemic in our society, and the lack of the rhythm. Like the people are not getting proper sleep, and they're not, going to sleep with the sun and waking up with the sun. So I think this is a very important and timely issue. So we are at the 45-minute mark, John. Thanks for a great discussion, great book. There's a lot of information, 500 pages. Where can people find Fix Your Mitochondria?
You can find it at fixyourgut.com. I offer health coaching as well too, email coaching, consultations. You can email me at john@fixyourgut.com. I'll send you a coupon code, obviously, for anybody who's listening out there. And one thing I want to mention to you, William, real quick, one thing in closing is something you've done a lot of research on, and something I just want to mention is the jabs, the mRNA jabs, have had a significant toll, especially on cardiovascular mitochondrial health through blood clot formation, among other things, that has taken a strong toll on people's health since the beginning of the pandemic and the implementation of the mRNA vaccines and the viral vector DNA vaccines. They have had a strong detrimental effect on mitochondrial health, which is something that I did not write. But if I was going to do a second edition, there would be a part of, the second chapter is dedicated on various things that cause poor mitochondrial health. That would definitely be one listed, added to it in a second edition. And I might do a blog on it, on how the mRNA and the DNA viral vector vaccinations have done a number on mitochondrial health of people en masse, including cardiovascular mitochondrial health and integrity of veins and arteries, as well as person's heart too as well, which seems to be the main cause of issues due to the jabs outside of cancer, which is a mitochondrial issue in and of itself, is strokes, aneurysms, and heart attacks.
Right. So it's another thing, like you got to really be careful. The good news is that your body will replace damaged cells in most of your organs, I think, maybe not the heart.
Outside of your brain and your heart, relatively, yes.
Yeah.
Some more than others. Your liver is able to regenerate itself very well. And I guess one thing I forgot to mention is your brain has, if I had to rank the three organs that have the most mitochondrial or the most important for mitochondrial health, would be your brain, heart, and your liver.
Gotcha. So there's things you can do. You don't have, and I mean, these are things that, just like John's saying, like it probably is an optimal guide for each person. It's a little different, but there's things you can do to improve your health, improve your well-being, improve your function. Like some of this stuff does cause depression. Like I think a lot of depression or maybe even anxiety comes from people not taking care of themselves properly, not eating good food, not drinking clean water, not getting proper sleep. These are all things going back to Fix Your Mitochondria. Thanks for listening, everybody. We had 100 kind of listeners. And so people can go to fixyourgut.com.
Yes.
Further inquiries there. The book is there, right?
Yes, it is. Both Fix Your Gut and Fix Your Mitochondria are both there at the top. You can click a link to my Podia store at the top. There's a link for health coaching as well at the top. Will just direct you to my Podia store. As well, there are 250 plus blogs and articles written on Fix Your Gut as well, too. Of course, the newest post there, as you can see, is on methylene blue. And thank you, William, for having me on again. It's been a pleasure, and God bless each and every one of you listening.
Yeah, God bless you. Thank you. Wealth of knowledge. You can tell how much John knows about this subject. In addition, you can go to We've Read the Documents as well. So something a little different than his health, but he's putting out a lot of stuff on We've Read the Documents. I get notifications on my email almost every day. So John is a busy guy, and check him out. We've Read the Documents, fixyourgut.com. And then the book we talked about today again is Fix Your Mitochondria. John Brisson. Thanks so much.
Thank you, William. God bless everyone.
God bless you.